All right, that's good singing tonight. I thought so. Thank you. Thank you. You thought it was good too? Yeah. I mean, I might have been biased or something like that, but I felt like we done all right. It's good to have that back going. I ain't the best at it, but I sure do love to lift my voice for the Lord. Make a joyful noise unto the Lord. I'm not sure if it's joyful for everybody else, but I sure do enjoy it. We're going to do the same thing this evening as we did this morning. I'd like to try to finish that message out. So y'all find your way to Genesis chapter 13 tonight. I'm going to read our jumping off point there in Matthew, and then I'll catch up with y'all over there in the book of Genesis as we're looking at these individuals that it gives us here in Matthew in the lineage of Christ there. And as I was studying, like I said, these names begin to jump off the page, especially those in verse number 2. As we get deeper into some of these names, there might be a few that we just kind of touch and go on through, but this first grouping here in verse number 2 really jumped out to me, really showed me some things about these individuals that I believe would be beneficial for us in our life as we're looking at the study of Matthew. So Matthew chapter 1, y'all in Genesis 13, I'll be there in a minute. Matthew 1, verse 1, the book of the generation of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham begat Isaac, and Isaac begat Jacob, and Jacob begat Judas and his brethren. So as we're looking here at these individuals that are tied in with Christ, could I say that they are in the family of God? Is that a fair assumption tonight? They are in the lineage of Jesus Christ. They're in the family of God. These are things that are associated with Christ, and I believe the lessons we can learn from them ought to be things that are in our lives as well. As we spoke this morning and started out looking at the idea of Abraham's blind faith. And I talked at great length, longer than I meant to. I had 4 points, and I got through one of them this morning, so we'll see. But we talked on his blind faith, and we talked specifically on the blind faith in his travel. We talked about how that in verse number 1 of chapter 12, God has called Abraham to travel out of the place that he was in. He called him to travel, and in this travel, he had to leave some things. And we spoke and preached on the things that he was leaving, and how that us in our Christian life have got things that we need to leave in the rear view as well. Sadly, most of us, we want to hold on to it. We want to do our own thing and think that we're going to carry it with us. It's almost like we're going to get on an airplane, and they told us that we can't bring anything over 3 ounces, but we got there and it was 5 ounces, and we didn't understand why they told us no at the gate. The Lord does that in our lives. He's told us some things that don't need to go with us, some things we need to leave behind, and a lot of times when we get in His will and we start trying to go and do, we wonder why He's told us no, that we can't keep that and no, we can't have that. He's already instructed us. He has already let us know that. But I want to pick up here in Genesis 13, not on the blind faith in his travel, but I believe Abraham's blind faith here in his tussles. And I keep saying blind faith because he's setting the example. He's the mold, so to speak, when it comes to this idea of faith. I know that Noah came before, and there were some others as well. But for the Jewish religion there's quite a lot of people there that they put a lot on Abraham's shoulders. They claim him quite consistently in the New Testament about our father Abraham did this and that and over and over again. So if I can say it this way, he is their poster boy. He is the one that they are looking at, the one they are learning after, the one that they are trying to mold their life after here. So they're looking at his example as he is leading the way. And the first person that's got to lead the way in, they are paving the way, and they're making sure it's good for everybody else. I remember when I was young, we used to go down to the creek and play. And these cell phones done ruined that for a lot of people, but we went and played in the creek. And we swung off the grapevines, and we played in the ditch catching crawdads and fish, and found out about 15 years later that it was a sewage ditch the whole time. That's just how it works out. But that's how we were. That's how we grew up. We played in the creeks. We played in the ditches. And we had a great philosophy. We get down the creek, me and Mackay Hurd and Blake Spears there, some buddies that I grew up with. When we got down to that creek, Mackay was the leader. He was the fastest. He was going first. I wasn't going to be last because I wanted to make sure that they could see me. If I went down so somebody could help me, I was going to be in the middle. So I went second because I wasn't quite brave enough to go first, or maybe I was smart enough to make him go first. And then Blake came third. But we'd get in that creek, and we would set ourselves a timer, and we would run down that creek and see how far we could get before the timer, and then we'd have to come on back because we only had a certain amount of time we could play. But in that creek, there was a lot of places there where it was pretty snaky. There was places where there's big old brush piles and just a little old path to get through it. So our great thinking was, we can run faster than a snake can strike. So if you're running full blast, there's no way that they can hit you, right? That's our mindset. So Micaiah would cut out running, he'd run through there, and I'm watching real close, because if I saw something, I wasn't going. He's going to have to get back to me because I wasn't going to him. But he had to have some blind faith to go through those places to get by that thing to where maybe, just maybe, there wasn't a snake there. Now, we had our fair share of run-ins. We stepped on them and everything else and just got lucky. I don't know how we never got bit. But he had some blind faith as he was blazing that trail through there. And I believe Abraham has got some faith as well as he is blazing this trail here as God is directing him. Now, everybody else can look at his example and say, because of Abraham's faith, I can have faith in my challenge just like that as well. So in Genesis 13, verse number 7, let's pick up right here. I believe not only faith in the travel, but faith in the tussles of life, in his people problems. In verse 7, it says, and there was strife between the herdmen of Abram's cattle and the herdmen of Lot's cattle, and the Canaanite and the Perizzite dwelled then in the land. And Abram said unto Lot, let there be no strife. I'll pray thee between me and thee, and between my herdmen and thy herdmen, for we be brethren. Is not the whole land before thee? Separate thyself, I pray thee, from me. If thou wilt take the left hand, then I will go to the right. Or if thou depart to the right hand, then I will go to the left. And Lot lifted up his eyes and beheld all the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, and thou comest, as thou comest into Zoar. Then Lot chose him all the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated themselves the one from the other. And Abram dwelled in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelled in the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent toward Sodom. But the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before the Lord exceedingly. Let me stop reading right there. I said in the tussles here that he had faith. He had some faith to get through the problems in life, the people problems, and we all have them. I'll be completely honest, I expected there to be some tussles yesterday when we were taking stuff out the door and putting it in the dumpster. I halfway expected there to be some things, but everybody was wonderful. And I mean wonderful. I'll brag on everybody on that because we really came together, and I don't think of any situation that came up as we were getting rid of some of those things. But we're all going to run into tussles. We're all going to run into problems here, and the problem might not be that we don't like each other. Abram and Lot got along just fine, did they not? The reason that they had an issue, the reason that they had strife was honestly because they had too much. It literally says the land could not bear them. They had too much, so they had to separate out. Have you, maybe you parents will get this illustration. You're a little loving, straight-A child student, the one that you got the terrific kid, bumper sticker, all that type of stuff. They probably got a friend that is their best friend that they want to spend every waking minute with, but what happens when they spend that second or third day together? They start to get mad at each other, do they not? They spent too much time together. My mom used to always tell us that in the summer. We would spend the night at each other's house. It'd be at their house one night, and my house the next night. We'd go back and forth, and she would finally say, no, you don't need to do it anymore because y'all are fighting like cats and dogs because you spent too much time together. Lot and Abram here, they've got too much. They spent too much time together. They've gotten to this point where there's strife. I was curious when I was looking at this word strife there in that very first verse where it's mentioned, and it says there was strife between the herdmen in verse number 7. It literally means a grapple. A grapple. There's a small tussle. There's a little bit of a wrestling match that went on here, but that was it. It was between these men here. Now, when I was growing up, we wrestled for fun. That's just the way we did it. In the locker room, something like that. We just wanted to play tap out. We wanted to wrestle, and we could laugh at each other right after that. It'd be no big deal. But this thing is fixing to grow on them. It said it started here as a tussle, as a small a grapple, a small wrestling match here. But then in verse 8, when Abram says to Lot, let there be no strife, strife right there means quarrel. It's grown from a little tiny small problem, and now it has gotten into a full-blown quarrel that he's trying to stop. He's saying, I see that it's something small right now. I see that our issue, I see that our problem is something very, very, very small. We're not mad at each other. We don't hate each other. We're on the same team. We're still family. We're still friends. But there is something that has got in. It's very small right now, and I want to stop it before it gets to be a full-blown quarrel. I believe that we can see here in this tussle that Abraham has faith in God to resolve the tussle. He has faith to fix that problem. He has faith in God to do it. Me and Sue were just talking on the way home earlier today about problems in our life that God has solved for us, that we didn't have to do. Conversations we weren't looking forward to having. Situations that we didn't want to tackle. And we sat back and we prayed, and God got in that situation and He fixed it. He resolved it. But I began to look here and just think, if I'm Abram right here, and I keep saying Abraham and Abram, same guy, okay? Y'all forgive me on that. He ain't got the ham just yet. But I'm using them interchangeably. But Abram here, Lot is with you. If it's me, and I'm going where God told me to go, and Lot is with me, or he's in my camp living with me, and they have this problem between the herdmen, how would we solve it? It wouldn't be the way Abraham did. I would probably look at them and say, you need to get your boy over there. You need to fix his attitude. You need to straighten him up, because we're going to have a problem, and if not, you need to fire that cat and get him out of here. We ain't going to deal with him no more. That's the way we want to solve problems today. We want to solve problems by being the bigger man. We want to solve problems by being the one that's ramrodding this thing, the one that's making the rules, says it's going to be my way or the highway. That's how we want to solve the problem. But I look at Abram, and he doesn't do that at all. He doesn't do that one bit. He ain't even got a dog in the hunt as far as it being his problem or his fight. It's between two other guys over here. But Abram is so focused on there not being an issue in the camp, and there not being a problem, and it not growing into a full-blown quarrel, that he's going to go and he's going to humble himself before Lot, even though he didn't have to. He's going to humble himself before Lot in an effort to stop the fight before it ever starts. Is that not what he did? What did he do? He said there, let there not be strife between us. In verse number 8, I pray thee between me and thee, and between my herdmen and thy herdmen, for we are brethren. Is not the whole land before thee? Separate thyself. And he says, if you go left, I'll go right. If you want to go right, then I'll go left. Abram has gotten into this problem, and he sees it coming down the way, and instead of letting it blow up and get bigger and bigger and bigger, he says, I'm going to get in there. I'm going to stop it before it gets to that point. I'm going to go to this individual that might have a problem eventually, and I'm going to say, what do you want? What do you want to fix it? He said, I don't want there to be an issue. I don't want there to be a fight. I know that it's not my fault that there's a fight. I know that I didn't have anything to do with it, but I can get in it, and I can fix it right now. So he goes in and says, you want the left side, go. You want the right side, go. I'll go the other way. I'm going to give you what you want. I'm going to sacrifice. I'm going to make sure that this thing is good for you. What did he do? He turned the other cheek. He was the bigger man. He humbled himself. He got in a place where he can fix that situation. Me and Sue talked all the time when we first got married. And we both were hot-headed. Sometimes we still are. And I told Sue one day, we had situations at the church. There was things at work. I was at my wit's end. I was mad. I was on that cliff. I'm ready to jump off. I'm ready to just lose my religion on somebody. I'm ready for this thing to be bad. I'm sick and tired of it. And I was telling Sue about it, and Sue just starts egging me on. She's like, yeah, you ought to do this. You ought to tell them that. And I stopped her. I'm like, Sue, I'm already close enough to jumping. I need you to pull me off the ledge, not push me off here, okay? I need you to help me on this. And she said, I'm sorry. I just wanted to take your side. So we began to talk, and I said, when those situations arise, Sue, what we need to be, instead of a match to light that thing on fire, we need to be an ice cube to put it out. Instead, we need to do everything we can to keep it from getting worse. But sadly, a lot of folks now, you ever seen two people in public arguing? You know how you win an argument? You get louder than the other person. At least that's what everybody thinks. You get louder. Whoever's louder and who's ever saying the most hurtful things is winning the argument in the eyes of the world. That don't sound real biblical. That don't sound real good to me. Them guys right there, they're arguing like that. I've heard this before too. It said, never argue with an idiot in public because nobody knows who the idiot is. You ever heard that one? Yeah, that rings true too. But I've noticed that people will get in that, and the only way they know to have a talk with somebody is to elevate that thing and make it worse and worse and worse until it's a full-blown problem. So I've tried to model my life on what Abraham has done here and being an ice cube and de-escalating that situation. I've made a career out of it at MDOT. I have to go out there. I just had a guy on a job the other day. In order for them to work, they have to install what's called a construction entrance. Essentially what that means is anywhere that equipment is leaving the work on the job site and getting on the asphalt road, they have got to put rock in place so that the mud gets knocked off the tires so they don't track it in the road. And I told him one day I had to shut the job down. You want to get somebody real mad at you? You go shut their work down, that's their livelihood, and tell them you can't do nothing else till you do what I told you to do. He said, you got to install construction inches. You got to fix your erosion control. You got to do this. You got to do that. Brother Easton, how did you have that much power? I'll tell you how I have that much power. Because I had to shut him down, he didn't have his stuff in order, I've got a bill for $688,000 sitting in my computer right now that he is owed. Because he didn't do his job, I told him I wasn't paying him. You want to motivate somebody? You take over $500,000 from them and tell them that you're going to do what I tell you to do, and they're going to do it. But no, the guy was sitting there, and I was talking about these construction issues, how you got to do it, and he got up in my face, man. He was so close I could smell what he had for supper 3 nights ago. He was right up in my face, and he's just hollering at me, and he's spitting at me about like I'm spitting at Trey right now. But he's right on top of me, man, and I'm sitting there, and I'm itching. I'm like, oh, I just want to knock you out right now. I do. I just want to smoke you and just be done with this whole thing. But I didn't. I kept my cool, and I talked to him, and I talked him down, and I de-escalated it, and my inspector came up at the end. He said, you handled that very well. He said, you've done a really good job on that. You held your ground. You didn't let him run over you, but you didn't make it no worse than it needed to be. That's what we have got to do as a Christian. We've got to get to the point to where instead of blowing something up, we can de-escalate that situation, get it down small, and trust that God is going to resolve it. Do you really think Abraham had in his mind that he wanted to leave that land he was on? He picked to camp there for a reason. He picked to camp right there because it was good for the flocks. He was comfortable where he was. He was in his tent. He had his tent set up and all that. I don't know if y'all have ever tent camped before. We go on that elk hunt every once in a while. I don't know if I'll get to go this year. But we'll go up there, and I remember one year we done toted our stuff in. These packs weigh 60 pounds. We're up and down the mountains on the side of Colorado over there. We get in there. I done walked over 5 miles on these little pig trails toting this thing. I'm about to die. I'm done hit my 2nd, 3rd, 4th wind. I'm done. At this point, I'm going to just drop my pack and roll to the bottom of the hill and just be done with it. But I get there, and it's getting dark. And my daddy was 59 at the time, 58 at the time. He's huffing and puffing. I'm like, I can't get myself off this mountain. If he goes down, I can't get him off either. We definitely going to have to roll down to that creek. Hope it runs back towards town. That's our only choice. I'm going to ride him like an inner tube all the way down the creek. It's all I could do. I was out of options. But I said, we're going to camp right here. We can't go no farther. This is it. Can't do it no more. And then next thing you know, we get up the next morning. The good campsite was about 2 turns down the thing. It was less than a half mile to the next turn there. But we had to huff and we had to puff and we had to get going to that thing to get where we needed to be. I was where I wanted to camp, but I had to move again, and I don't know why I had to pack up and move again. Abraham was where he wanted to be, where he felt he needed to be, but he had to move in order to keep the peace. It might be that we're settled in some things. We like our own opinion on some things. We like what we think, but somebody's got an issue with it, and we might just have to move over a little bit to let them ease in to keep the peace. I'm not talking about sacrificing our convictions. You know I'm not. I'm not talking about changing our Bible. I'm not talking about none of that. But some of these little petty things that are just itty-bitty tussles, little people problems like this, we can let that mess go in order for it to stay a small tussle before it blows up into a full-blown quarrel. Abraham says, I'm going to let you have what you want here. You pick where you want to go. You have the side of the land that you want. You take the good land out towards Sodom and Gomorrah there towards the plains, and I'll go over here to this side. You pick what you want, and I'm going to make sure that we keep the peace here between our herdmen, between our family here. And I'll tell you something. God has a way of rewarding us when we do that, when we play peacekeeper here. He had faith in the resolution, but not only did he have faith that there was going to be a resolution to that argument, he had faith in the result. He knew that no matter what Lot picked, if he picked left and Abraham had to go right, he knew God was going to take care of him over there. If Lot picked right and Abraham had to go left, he knew that God was going to take care of him over there as well. But after this has happened and Lot there has picked the way that he wants to go, I notice what it says in verse 14, and the Lord said unto Abram after that Lot was separated from him, lift up now thine eyes and look from the place where thou art northward and southward and eastward and westward, for all the land which thou seest, to thee will I give it, and thy seed forever. You remember this morning when he got the promise of getting all the land? It was after he demonstrated all that faith to leave what God told him to leave. You want to know when he got the promise again here that he's going to get that land? It was after he had faith through this tussle. But not only that, it goes on further. You can keep on reading to chapter number 14. He has faith as well throughout the trials. He has faith in the trials that pop up in his life. I'm going to save it here for the sake of time, but if you'll read the first portion of chapter 14, you're going to find that there's 4 bad kings here, and they're going up against 5 good kings, all right? I say good because they're on the same side as Abram for this particular text. I'm not saying they're good people. There's 4 bad kings. There's 5 good kings. And they're going to go and they're going to fight together. And these 4 bad kings are going to whip the 5 good ones. Okay? And one of these 5 good kings just so happened to be the one over Sodom. So when these kings are beat down, they take Lot and they take all of his possessions and they take him away. And Abraham, or Abram here, hears about it. Now you think about this. I said there was 5 versus 4. 5 kings lost. What do you think Abraham was going to be able to do? If 5 kings couldn't beat the 4, if 5 kings couldn't come together and combine their armies and beat this individual or this group of 4 kings here, does Abraham really stand a chance? Does he really, just logically speaking, does he have a chance of going in and fighting them off? No. It'd be like Rhode Island trying to fight off Texas. They just ain't got the size. They just ain't got the people. The math doesn't work out. There's no way that Abraham could do this, right? There's no way whatsoever. In verse 11 of chapter 14 it says this, "And they took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their victuals and went their way. And they took Lot, Abram's brother's son, who dwelt in Sodom, and his goods, and departed. There came one that escaped and told Abram," verse 14, "and when Abram heard that his brother was taken captive," check this out, "he armed his trained servants, born in his own house, 318. 5 kings couldn't get it done. But we think 318 are going to. We really think 318 are going to come into this thing? Abraham had faith. Abraham had faith in his servants. He had faith in those around him. We just talked about it. I believe it was, I don't know when it was. I talked to so many people now I can't remember nothing. I'm just getting old, I guess, and all you old folks are going to get mad at me for saying that. But I was talking to somebody, and I made the statement that we need to be able to come together and lean on one another. It was in Brotherhood this morning. That's when it was. I was talking about how that we need to be able to trust one another and lean on one another and help one another when we have troubles and we have trials. I need to be able to depend on the one to my left and the one to my right. I need my people that are with me, those that I've surrounded myself with, to have my back no matter what the odds are. When you come to me and you say, "Brother Easton, I've got a family member and they're struggling and they're going through this," you didn't do that just because you wanted me to know. You wanted me to pray. You wanted me to try to do everything I could to help. You wanted me to pray. When you put somebody on the prayer list, we didn't do it because we like to practice our writing on their names. We did it because we want people to pray, because we trust that those around us, we have faith that those around us can get into the throne room of God and call out to the Master, and that He will come down here and He will heal those individuals. Abram has those around him. It's his servants. It's his house. These are people that he knows. These are people he's gone through thick and thin with. He has got faith in their abilities to step up and help him in the time of trouble. Look around tonight, Beulah. Do you have faith in the people here with you tonight to take care of you and help you when you're down? Miss Ann, what did you say last Wednesday night after service? You stood up and you said something. You remember what it was? She said, "I want to thank everybody for praying for me because y'all's prayers got me through when I was in the hospital." You know what she had? She had some faith in those around her, in their prayers, and what that had done for her. We go around the room tonight, we could talk about people who have been down and have situations that have gone bad, and the odds looked against them. It was 318 versus 4 kings, so to speak. It seemed like there was no way it was going to work. It seemed that God wasn't going to come through. It seemed that there was no light at the end of the tunnel. But people got in and prayed, and because of that faith, things turned out all right. Abraham had faith in his servants. He had faith that they could get in, the ones that were around him, to help him with that. Not only that, he had faith in his salary. What? All right, let me read it on to you, okay? Long story short, sake of time, Abraham and his 318, they go in and they get done what 5 kings couldn't do. 318 chased them cats all the way across there. They chased them all the way to Hobah there in verse number 15. And it comes on down through there in verse 21. "And the king of Sodom said unto Abram, Give me the persons and take the goods to thyself." He's trying to pay Abram for what he did. Verse 22, "And Abram said to the king of Sodom, I lift up my hand unto the Lord, the Most High God, the possessor of heaven and earth, that I will not take from a thread even to a shoe latchet, and that I will not take anything that is thine, lest thou shouldest say, I have made Abram rich." He had faith in the salary, he had faith in what God had given him, and he wasn't going after anything else. I wonder tonight if we're pleased with what God has given us. I wonder tonight if we have faith in everything that God has given unto us. I've told portions of the story here, but one of the biggest challenges of faith in my life was just a couple years ago. Sue came in. I was at Locust Grove, and I was still working at New Albany. And she was working with Medical Solutions. She was a onboarding specialist. Essentially, she was an agent for traveling nurses. She found the gigs. She helped them set them up, gave them the paperwork, all that. And I'll just straight up tell you, Sue was making $46,000 a year. She came into our house. She looked at me and said, God's telling me to quit my job and come home. I handled it well. I looked at her and said, He ain't told me nothing. Go back to work. And I told her that for several months. And the Lord finally got on me, and He never did tell me for her to come home. But what He did tell me was, you're standing between me and your wife. You're standing between me and my will for your wife. You're making your wife live out of my will. And I said, yes, Lord. Come to the house, Sue. Come on home. We took a $46,000 pay cut. You don't talk about faith. You don't talk about something hard. When I'm doing the numbers on paper, it's red, 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 if you know what I mean. There ain't no way this thing's going to work, but this is what God has told us to do. This is what God has told Sue to do, and I'm not going to make my wife get out of the will of God. So I'm going to go all faith, and I'm going to trust that God is going to provide, and He's going to do what He says He's going to do. And I don't know how He did it, but He took our money and He stretched it. He just multiplied. I don't know. I'm not saying there was more money there, but it just seemed like it went further. It just seemed like the bills were getting paid. It just seemed like that everything went good. And all the stuff at the house that normally breaks and costs you money all the time, it worked good. It worked good. And hopefully it'll just keep on working good there. But it did. He spared us of that. And then taxes came in. We had a little bit of money and things were good. Like, hey, we might actually get something done. That's when it all breaks, and God took all the tax return back. But He gave us just enough to be okay. And we went more, and we did more, and we served more in those years that God took that away from us than we did the years previous to that. On paper, it does not work out. But I began to look at that. And right after we took that step, and we said, God, we're going to be satisfied with what You've got for us. We're going to be satisfied with the amount of money that You've chosen to give unto us. It's amazing. After 5 years, Locust Grove gave me a raise. And then after the point system and everything at work, how we got raises being all froze up, I went into work and I got a raise at work. And it wasn't just a little while longer, and I got another raise. And before you knew it, God had made up over half of what we had given to Him. Just like that. And now where we're sitting at right now is ahead of where we were with our salary. It's amazing what God does. It's amazing what He does. And I don't want to just stand up here and be this prosperous, do-good preacher. I'm not trying to say that tonight. But what I am telling you is I didn't have faith at first, and I made Sue go through that misery for 6 months because of my lack of faith. And then finally, I manned up enough or prayed up enough or whatever. And I said, all right, God, let's do it. But I'm going to need You to help in this. And every time the bills weren't getting paid, it's amazing. Some church would call, I'd get to go preach. They'd pay me more than I'm worth, which everybody does if I go and preach because I ain't worth nothing. But they'd give me more than I was worth. It'd be right on time. It'd fix that bill. And this thing would come in and it'd help. And I'd get called to do a VBS for somebody. And they'd pay me way more than I expected. And God would take care of that. All He's saying is, you be satisfied with the salary and what I've chosen to give you and live off of that, and you'll be just fine. I can't explain it. I can't. I really cannot explain it. I had a buddy of mine, I was telling this story earlier. He was doing the youth at a church, and the guy that had that position before him was getting paid to do it, but my buddy was not. And he came to me, and he was venting to me and talking to me about it and all this stuff, and said that he had went, and he talked to the pastor. And the pastor said, well, I'll talk to some of the youth parents, and we'll see if we want to do something like that and move forward with it, because it does sound fair. They used to do it. Why not do it now? We went to the parents, and some of the parents said this, is he even doing anything? He's there every single Wednesday night. He's taking them and doing stuff all the time. It's just like they look right over him, and it hurt him so bad. And he's saying, they don't even appreciate what I've done. It makes me just want to leave and go somewhere else. And I stopped him, I looked at him, I said, buddy, I said, you might not be getting paid at the church, but how many raises have you gotten in your secular job since you started doing the youth? He said, at least 1 or 2. He said, it might be that God's using the world's pockets to pay you for what you're doing for Him. God has a way of providing. God has a way of taking that salary that we need and giving it to us and making sure that it's enough. I don't know everybody's financial situation tonight, but I can rest assured in this, we all want more. Fair enough. Ain't a one of us here that would turn down a raise if somebody was bringing it. If somebody decided to put a $100 bill in your hand, every single one of us would say thank you. We put it in our pocket. Now some of you hard-headed rascals are like, no, I ain't going to take that, I ain't going to do that, I'm going to leave that alone. I'm going to be nice. But no, every one of us wishes that we had more. But at the end of the day, can we be content with the salary that God has given us? Because when these trials come, Abraham had faith in that. But not only that, verse number 15 here, he had faith in the shield as well. After these things, this is after the 318 have fought, they've won, Lot is back, everything's good, everything's hunky-dory. Verse 1, after these things, the word of the Lord came unto Abram in a vision, saying, Fear not, Abram, I am thy shield and thy exceeding great reward. You know, we can all claim that God is our shield, but it's something else entirely when He tells us. It's something else entirely when He takes it out of His time and His day to come and to remind us that He is our shield. I sure am glad tonight that He's my shield and I have faith in that shield. You know, if I was a knight and I was fighting, I wouldn't take a cardboard shield. I'd take a shield that I knew could hold. I would take a shield that I had faith in to stop every blow. I'm going to stick with God being my shield, because there's been times in my life where I've tried to be my own shield. I've tried to hide behind my own devices and my own goods and my own smarts, my own efforts, my own whatever. I've tried to do it all by myself. And everything the devil threw went straight through to me. But when I use God as my shield and I have faith in that, things work out good. I'm going to give you one more tonight and we're going to be done here. Not only did he have faith throughout these tussles and faith throughout trials of servants and salaries and shields and all of these things, but the biggest thing about Abraham that we all remember is his faith through time. His faith through time. We live in a now generation. We live in a fast food generation. We want it right now. We don't want to wait. We want it to just be at our beck and call. We want it at our fingertips. I was messing with the men this morning. They were cooking breakfast, and I told them that I would come and help cook. And they said, no, you don't get into none of that. You don't do none of that. And I said, well, I'm going to come drink coffee then. They said, we got plenty of coffee drinkers and complainers. You don't do that either. I said, okay, well, I'll keep the complaints at the house, and I'll just drink coffee. And I come up here, and I was walking around, and Russ and Chris was back there, and they was turning them eggs around. I had my coffee in my hand. I said, I ain't heard no complaining yet, so I guess I got to step in. Did y'all put any salt and pepper on them eggs? And they just turned and looked at me and said, get out of here with that. You can salt and pepper your own eggs. They said, this ain't Burger King. You don't get to have it your way. I said, fair enough. But do we not live in a generation and a time where everybody wants it their way? Everybody wants it their way, and they want it right now. They want it right now. But look at Abraham. I was going to throw these texts out to you, okay, for sake of time. In chapter number 12, he's 75 years old, and that's when God tells him he's going to be a great nation. How many of us at 75 years old thinks we finna have a whole lot of kids? Not a one of us. Not a single one of us. Nobody in here. It's already too late at 75 years old. When he gets the announcement here that he's going to be a great nation, he's already thinking there's no way it's going to work. But then it goes on a little bit longer, and he tries to come up with his own alternate. In Genesis 16 is when the whole episode with Hagar takes place. They come up with an alternate. They try to do it on themselves to help God out. And guess what? God tells them, nope, that ain't him neither. You're still waiting. And then it goes on a little bit later in Genesis 18. He tells them once again that they're going to have a child, and that's when Sarah laughs to herself. Said, no, we're going to give up hope. There ain't no way this is going to happen. And then finally in Genesis 21, we find Isaac gets born. We find his arrival there. How old was Abraham when they had him? Anybody remember? Anybody remember how old Abraham was when they had Isaac? Right at 100 years old. He's 99. I ain't the best at math. I got a degree that says I am, but I'm good with X's and O's, not regular numbers, I guess. But no, 99 to 100 years old minus about 25 is 75. He waited 25 years for God to give him what he said he was going to give him. You want to talk about faith? Have some faith through time. Have some faith through time, because we're praying, God, we want this. God, we want you to do that. We want that one saved. We want this one back in church. We want. And when God doesn't do it, the next day we wake up, when he's not like the tooth fairy, and we put it under our pillow and we wake up with $20 bills. If somebody's giving out $20 bills with teeth, I'm coming for a sleepover at your house, and I'll give some of these bad boys up. No, I'm just telling you, it's not like that. We don't get to say, God, I want it. And I need it on express delivery to be here on Monday the 19th by 5 p.m. We don't get to do that to God. We don't get to organize when God delivers to us off of our faith. We have to have faith that it comes when? Right on time. It comes right in the timing that he has for us. Let me find this real quick, chapter 21. I love what he says there when he's announcing that the time is here. Let's see here. Chapter 21, verse 2. For Sarah conceived and bare Abraham a son in his old age at the set time. What set time? The time when God said it was right. The time when God decided the time was right for him to come through on what they've been having faith in this whole time. I don't know what you're praying for tonight. I don't know what you've been waiting on. But I can guarantee you I've been frustrated. I've been tired of waiting. I've been wishing God would hurry up. I have every one of those things. I've tried every single one of them. But at the end of the day, none of my fussing, none of my complaining, none of that sped God up. God showed up right when he was supposed to. God came through on that faith right when he was supposed to. So I just want to encourage us here tonight, when we look at the faith through time of Abraham, that when we've been praying for a week or 2 days or 2 weeks or maybe even a month and it hadn't happened yet, it might be that God has not said no, he's just said not right now. But I wonder how many of us can say that we've been praying for somebody for years and years and years. Ladies, y'all come on piano. I'm going to tell this story and I'm going to be done tonight. Talking about praying for somebody through years. My black truck, which is in the shop right now. But for years now, I got an aftermarket radio put in, and for some reason they messed up a fuse or something. And from time to time, my steering wheel controls would go out in that truck. And when those went out, I had 1 to 2 days to pop the hood and pull the fuse for the radio out and put it back in. If I did that, the truck, I don't know why, I don't know how it works out, I'm not a mechanic, but I figured out if I put that fuse back in there, just took it out, put it back in, the steering wheel controls would come back, it would crank, it would do just fine, it would run like there was nothing wrong with it. But if I didn't take that fuse out, then and put it back in there, if I didn't do it in the quick amount of time there, within a day or so, the truck would be deader than the doorknob next time I went out there. And I have to jump that truck off to be able to get it to go on down the road. Well, I was at Ole Miss in engineering school, and I was going down Jackson Avenue there, and I was nearly to Walmart, and I went to hit my steering wheel controls, and when I did, they didn't come on. They didn't work. I turned to myself, my goodness, here we go. So I got to find somewhere to pull off and pull the fuse and put it back in there. And I pull in at Walmart, and this is just the most out-of-place thing ever on Jackson Avenue in Oxford during frat boy season at Ole Miss. But I pull in back there at the automotive place, and the most country hick-looking dude I've ever seen in my life. He's a high school kid. He comes out. He's got overalls on. He's got one strap off. I can't remember if he had a shirt underneath them overalls or not, but he had a dip so big he couldn't close his mouth, and he's walking like a, man, what's wrong with your truck? So I began to tell him the story of what happened, and I prayed with him, and I invited him to church, and I was witnessing to him, and I said, man, where are you going to spend eternity? And he looked at me and said, I'm going to go to hell. I was like, don't go to hell. He said, you know you ain't got to go to hell, right? He said, I know. He said, I know. I just ain't done right. My girl's on me. She wants to go to church. So I was inviting him to church. And I got his phone number there in that little interaction that we had. And for the next several years, 5, 6 years, I would text him from time to time and tell him, I've been praying for you every single day. I've been praying for you every single day. His name's Benjamin Bolton. To my knowledge, last time I texted, he still wasn't in church. He still wasn't saved. But I've been praying for him. I've stuck it out with him. I've been trying to do everything I can. I wonder about that wayward child. I wonder about that family member. I wonder about that one on that pink prayer list that's the long-term prayer list. I wonder how long we've been praying, if maybe we're just right to the end of wanting to just give up. Abraham waited 25 years. When he thought there was no possible way, when he thought there was no chance whatsoever, that's when God showed up and did it. That's when God came by and fulfilled that promise. He had faith through time. I want to encourage you tonight to have faith through time. Let's all stand tonight as they play.